You're listening to The Watchers, the show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV about an actual creek.
Jodie, you thought the creek was a metaphor?
No, I just never thought about it. I never realized that she'd literally be rowing a boat on a creek.
She's from the wrong side of the creek.
I had so little information that going in to this show.
That makes me so happy.
I didn't realize how little. I mean, I'm Jodie.
I'm Andrea.
You're Andrea. And we watched Dawson's Creek. And I thought I knew more about this show than apparently I did. I thought maybe I'd seen an episode. I have no familiarity with any of this.
I love that. That's so fun.
All new to me.
And now you, just based on our texting last night, you watched a few episodes, huh? How many did you?
Okay, to be fair.
It's a great show. Yeah, you're right. You're so correct.
To be fair, when I am working in my studio, I need something on often to keep my brain doing the two things at once that the ADHD desires. And so I watched, I think, 6.5 episodes of the first season.
This is thrilling for me.
I'm sorry, I will get into it, but I was gobsmacked at the whole statutory rape of it all. I just had to see how that ended.
I have so much to say about how this show, I mean, plenty of people have had a lot to say about how the show deals with various kinds of sex, and it is all problematic. They kind of never get it right.
Yeah, I mean, we're not treading new ground here with that, but for me, this was all brand new. So for the first episode, for a 15-year-old to kiss a 30-something-year-old, and then it continues.
That's kisses
just
him.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. He is the victim in all of this. I will repeat that as many times as I need to, because I was like, we are never going to deal with how fucked up this is. Again, we have to stick to the pilot, but good God.
We are never going to deal with how fucked up it is. It is so funny, though, that a 15-year-old admitted virgin says, I'm the best sex you'll never have. To a 36, I think he says pushing 40. I think she's supposed to be 36.
Yeah.
To a 36-year-ld woman.
The stuff that comes out of all of their mouths is obviously, you've brought this up before we even watched it, they're hyper verbal, overly articulate for teenagers. We talked about this with My So-Called Life, where it was this is how teenagers mostly talk. And then there's the version that is the Dawson's Creek version. But the shit that comes out of his mouth when he is talking to a grown fucking woman.
It's so funny.
That woman is ill.
Yeah. It's bad.
Woman is really, really fucked up in the head.
And it's and
it's not played that way.
No.
But she's a crazy person.
She starts the second she walks into that video store.
She's flirting.
With what is clear, it's not she didn't realize how young he was, because he seems much older.
No, he does
And then
not.
the second she realized he was one of her students, he is clearly a boy.
Yes.
Although she says you're not a boy.
He's a child.
Definitionally, he is a boy.
He's got weird short bangs.
You leave his hair alone.
Look, Joshua Jackson grew into a very handsome man. And I am a fan of his, but oh my God, as a grown woman, if I walked into a video store, if only they still existed.
I know.
If I walked into a video store and a 15-year-old boy that looked like Pacey was flirting with me, I would be like, okay, kid.
I know.
Her reaction is unhinged.
It's crazy.
It is so wrong. I mean, this is not the only thing that we're going to talk about, obviously, because we're still going to talk about the pilot. I did watch 6.5 episodes. But part of the reason I can't get over this is because I know where it goes after the pilot, which is even the pilot, the fact that she kisses him.
Yeah.
I was legitimately grossed out.
It's gross. And they don't play it that way. It is.
No, it's played like a romance. They're star-crossed lovers.
There are a couple of characters who get I found such a good essay about how this show handles sex and how fucked up it is. The people who get to be precious about sex and the people who are actually victims, but we don't treat them like victims. And then I'll link to it in the show notes, but the author is the people who kind of make some of the most unwise decisions in the show. Pacey and Jen, for example, are two people who are, like victims of real sex crimes, actual sex crimes. And it's totally glossed over. And it's like, if you think about the fact that these are two people who have like totally unprocessed, undealt with trauma that people know about and just ignore or celebrate, is like, no wonder every choice they make has like a film over it, you know? But it just is not, that's not how the show is treating it. But
no, and we don't get into Jen's backstory so much in the pilot, but
have you gotten to it yet? Does she talk about, I got
to it.
How old she?
Yeah. I texted you and was like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
She can't just be promiscuous because she wants to be. It has to be a trauma, right? Like, this is obviously late 90s, but it's so interesting now that we've done a bunch of other 1990s pilots to think about where this falls in how it treats like sex and sexuality. And I'm sure, like you said, lots of people have talked about this before, but coming off of watching My So-Called Life, where it's a much queerer show than this by a lot, like this felt I mean, I'm hoping that it doesn't stay as straight as it currently is, but like it's so straight right now, as was 90210.
I don't know. I won't say the details of this, but Dawson's Creek is the first gay primetime network kiss on television ever.
Okay, cool.
And they really fought for it. Kevin Williamson is gay. And this show is, we'll get in.
That's reassuring because a lot of in the pilot and in the first couple of episodes that I saw, it's gayness, whatever, queerness is only referred to as like a pejorative, which is like, 90s. Also normal for the 90s.
But it never feels okay.
Yeah. But like, just coming off of hanging out with Ricky for a little bit, I was missing a little bit of that like queer culture.
It's really kind of there's like a real sweetness and also kind of a sadness to hear Kevin Williamson talk about being a gay man in Hollywood and writing this show, and he was still really new to his career. Like I'm gonna let you kind of structure this for us because for me, I just have all these reactions. Many of which I texted to you already because I couldn't help myself, and you wouldn't answer me back because I think you were trying not to like jumpstart this conversation. But so Kevin Williamson, who we know, we watched Scream. That's his movie. He's written a bunch of stuff. I Know What You Did Last Summer is another good example of a movie that he made and is featured in Dawson's Creek, which is so funny. The poster is in the video store, and it's also in the film teacher's classroom, which is so funny because like a current horror movie, like I don't know. I thought that was a really funny touch. But
I don't know if he was a cool film teacher, he'd probably be pretty into Scream.
Maybe, yeah. So he had sold the script for Scream. It hadn't been made yet. And people were just like different, like TV networks were kind of like looking around for the next thing. And one of them, Paul Steuben, saw a like write up about Scream being sold in the back of some magazine or whatever, some like industry magazine, and asked for a meeting with Kevin Williamson. And Kevin Williamson didn't realize he was going to be asked to pitch a TV show. Like he had just sold this movie. He's never worked in TV before. He didn't really know what the meeting was. And so he kind of scrambled and was like, I totally have something. It's about a kid who really loves, and he started talking about his own life growing up with his best friend, whose name is Fanny in real life. So that's Joey Fanny.
I wish her name was Fanny. And this is so cute.
That it is really cute. But one of the things he talks about is he specifically gave her a boy's name as a little wink to himself to be like, I can't write about two boys being in love on this show, but it'll be a little inside joke for me that Dawson and Joey are two boys' names. So I'm kind of writing gay love here.
Which is funny because it also plays into the 90s trend of like the cool girl having a boy's name.
We talk about it all the time, And Dawson even says, I'm not gonna have to start calling you Josephine. Am I? Go all female on me. But so he pitched this show. It first got passed over by Fox, and then the WB, which had been working on their like new demographic. I think they launched in 95. Seventh Heaven was around in 96. But then Buffy is a year before Dawson's Creek, but they really wanted to start aiming for the like teen demo. And so Dawson's Creek, and this is something I didn't really think about at the time. Like, I was aware of this, but I didn't realize how anomalous it was, that the way they pitched that show and the way they marketed that show was unlike any other TV show at the time. They showed trailers for it before movies, like in theaters. They made movie type like posters that look like movie posters, hung them up in theaters. They had like a 2-minute long commercial.
I remember seeing those.
Yeah, it was like a huge. And if you watch the trailer for it, they're using the like movie guy voiceover. It's like, There comes a time.
Yeah.
There comes a time in all of our lives.
Dawson. You're Dawson. Dawson, yeah, I know. We met before.
Wow, you look different.
Puberty. Hi, I'm Joey. I live down the creek and we've never met.
When there's the end of something simple.
Are you and Dawson a thing? No, we're just friends.
And the beginning.
Oh my God.
Of everything else.
It's so obvious that and I mean, they pushed it so hard. So it was already like, it had huge buzz. It was immediately a hit. They did a really smart thing where they aired it after the second half of a 2-part Buffy event. So it was like 1 week, then the next week. So people were already watching because Buffy was already a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So season 1, it was huge. Immediately, people were up in arms about how, and it's again, another thing I didn't realize as a young person, or really even rewatching it before I started watching it this time to be like, oh, I'm going to have to talk about this show, how fully obsessed with sex it is. And how that was like a big deal at the time.
Oh my God. It was like, okay, to like, as an adult, I did keep putting myself back in the like, had I watched this as a teenager mindset, because I kind of had to, because as an adult, I was like, I can't, hearing these 15-year-olds talk this way about sex to each other. Like, I don't know what your generation was doing, Andrea, but mine was not speaking about sex like this. We were having it and doing things that, like, you know, were probably in the vein of Jen, her raunchy escapades in New York, but like, we weren't speaking about it like we were 40-somethings when we were 15.
Yeah, I think they're as obsessed with sex as we think.
Yeah.
And the way we have talked about young people being obsessed with it, but they're talking about it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a big deal. Though the thing that I had always remembered was the how often do you walk your dog thing? When do you walk your dog? That being like, because they couldn't talk about sex, frankly, so they had to hide it. But it's not. They talk about it constantly. Joey asks Dawson if Joey asks Jen if she's a size queen at one point.
I was like, wait.
She's such an asshole.
She's so rude.
She says, like, you know, she tells Dawson that he has genitalia now. More of it, anyway.
More of it, yeah.
So, like, they really did get away with a lot.
Yeah.
You can just hear this being the, but again, I didn't remember being shocked by that as a 12-year-old.
Well, and I'm also a little bit obsessed, and have been since I started watching the pilot, with this coming after 90210. I know there are things that came in between it, but I could not stop thinking about 90210, especially because we just watched it. And the way that show dealt with sex, like, it's different, but it's also not. It's different in tone for sure.
Right.
But I feel like, and like, I know that most people aren't going to agree with me on this, I feel like this is your 90210. Like,
oh, 100%. I mean, it also got, I know 90210 got 1 million episodes, but Dawson's Creek has almost 130.
Seasons, yeah.
It went on for a long time too.
I'm fascinated by the fact that 90210 was still on when this came out. Like, it was in its last couple of years. 90210 ran from 1990 to 2000, and Dawson's Creek started in 98. And so there was 2 years where it overlapped. And I found an article from the time that was like about how Dawson's Creek was catching up in the ratings. But like, there's so many things that I can see as like just emotional similarities. Like one of the articles I read about comparing the two was like, oh, we were never as obsessed with like the Brenda, Kelly, Dylan love triangle as people were with Joey and Pacey and Dawson. And I'm like, that is not fucking true. I don't know. You are not a Gen Xer because you do not know how much of a hold this had on us. Like there was Team Dylan and Team Team Kelly and Team Brenda like forever. And so I just think that like there's a lot more connections there. It's just funny to me because it almost feels like a torch was passed. Like 90210 was declining clearly and had turned into a full-on crazy soap opera by the time that Dawson's Creek came out. And it almost felt like a reset for the next generation of like, okay, we're going to go back to the innocent time. We're going to like kind of pull back from the soap opera craziness that these teen shows have turned into because the teens in the teen shows were getting older.
Right.
And we needed to like reset for the next generation. But I couldn't stop thinking about how people that were the right age for this show were looking at the teenagers in this, just like I was looking at like Brenda and Kelly and Dylan and Brandon.
And I think in a lot of ways, these teens, if you take out the way they talk, they probably, at least to me, felt more relatable in terms of like their interests, their lifestyle, what their school looks like. I mean, Dawson lives in the biggest house I've ever seen, but like, but otherwise, like, they're not.
Yeah, the location is definitely more relatable, but it's funny how when you're a teenager, you don't care about those things. Like the Beverly Hills of Beverly Hills 90210 was the least interesting part of it. For the people that watched it, it was really just about the teen romances. Like nobody cared about the fact that they were in this big fancy place. Like to me, like Dawson's house and living on the Cape on the water. Like I know they're not supposed to be like rich, especially Joey's character, but like to me, that's just as much of a fantasy as living in Beverly Hills as a kid growing up in Jersey. Right. You know, like it. To me, the location, even though it's supposed to be so wildly different, it's such a small factor in relating to the show. The show is not about the place necessarily, even though it's named after it. It's about the kids. So
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So I mean, like
I was desperate to live on a creek and row my boat to.
I mean,
my best friend's house.
Rowing a boat to my best friend's house is just as foreign to me as owning like a Porsche. You know, they're both wildly fantastical.
It's so funny. It's so silly and so quaint. It's weird to have such an idyllic, like, setting and then have these kids just be constantly talking about, like, just the, like, kind of raunchiest in a way that they're allowed to stuff. And then also have a teacher assaulting a young child. Like, it's cute.
And you know she went to Rochester and did it again. There's something wrong with that woman.
Oh, yeah. She was
I cannot let go of it.
Yeah. It's really bad.
He's a child.
I'm trying to think.
I texted you. I don't think I realized they were on an actual creek. And then my next
so funny.
The next text was, "Oh, we're doing a hot for teacher thing."
Yeah, it's bad.
Yikes. Yeah, illegal.
Also, I think she's on a date at that theater with Mr. Gold, with the film teacher.
Yeah, she's also dating people her own age at the same time, which is, well, isn't Mr. Gold, wait, is he gay? Is that the thing that was revealed?
She
says something to Pacey oh my God.
I don't remember
to defend her relationship with Pacey to him, she says,
oh, is this in an episode?
Something about how,
yeah. I will say I often skip season 1 or most of season 1. There are a couple of episodes of season 1 that I will always watch, but that I skip on a rewatch because I want to get to like Busy Phillips and Andy, who you haven't met yet.
No. Yeah. I made a little list of things I didn't know about this show.
Oh, let's do it. I do want to get into, so here's one thing though.
Yeah, we should structure ourselves because I'm like all over the place.
I do want to go through this as it doesn't have to be scene by scene, but I definitely want to go through it because I think this show gets a lot of shit because of the dialogue and because it's so of its time and what it is. But I think from an objective standpoint, I think this pilot is really good and really successful. There's some crazy stuff that happens, but if you want to talk about building a world, introducing characters, setting stakes, giving you what you need to know when you need to know it, establishing tone, like I think it nails. I really do think it nails all of that. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. Right. And I totally understand why it might not be now or in 1998. But I think the show did what it set out to do in this pilot.
I don't disagree. I mean, like, it's a lot of it looking back feels a little contrived, but it definitely lays out what you're in for, who the people are, where you are, all of those things. Like, I just keep thinking of this scene when Jen gets out of the yellow cab.
Iconic.
And is like walking towards them. I was like, okay.
And it's so, I do kind of, aside from the Pacey Tamara, like, of it all, the like teenage gaze in this, because like they're acting like she's a movie star coming out of that cab. She's wearing the just the plainest dress. She's got a mom's haircut.
She does have a mom's haircut.
But she's like new to them. Dawson remembers her being very young, so now she seems grown up. I mean, she's Michelle Williams, so she's beautiful. But like,
she's a blonde. She's like, you know.
But it's like, I think that's so funny. And I kind of think, I sort of think it knows that it is like what it's doing there.
Yeah. I hope so.
Important to remember, you saw Scream. You know, Kevin Williamson has like an understanding of these kinds of tropes and stuff for sure.
For sure. And, you know, that was one of the things that when I was noticing these sort of overtly almost cliched moments, I was like, oh, he's referencing something. Like, you know, thinking about
Dawson's
the way that
favorite filmmaker is Spielberg.
I know. And then the fact that Michelle Williams was in The Fabelmans like a couple years ago is so like full circle.
Such a weird little,
playing his mom.
He's such a teenage idiot boy, and I love that. Like, Dawson's my least favorite part of the show. He's everybody's least favorite part of the show. But what's so funny is that he thinks he feels, aside from the hyper verbality or whatever of it all, he feels like such a teen boy to me, because he thinks he's so smart and so clever, and his favorite filmmaker is Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And he gives the film teacher a fun fact that he calls it a little known fact, and it's like the biggest known fact about Psycho.
Yeah. Oh, he's a fucking idiot.
He's so funny.
He's a teenage idiot. Like I said, I got to, I think, 6.5 or so episodes, and like he just continues to be the most boneheaded, clueless teenage person. I mean, they kind of all are, but he's really out there.
It's very funny.
One of my fun facts of things I didn't know or thought I knew. I have confused Mark Paul Gosselaar and James Van Der Beek throughout my entire life, and I know this is not unusual. Yeah. There's been articles written about how they look the same, but like, and I knew they weren't the same person, but at the same time, I was like really trying to straighten the two of them out in my head for a long time. And now I finally think I have, because of watching this.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure that had part to do with why he was cast.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of little casting things real quick too, now that you're mentioning that I think are interesting is Katie Holmes originally read for Buffy, and they were going to cast her, but because Buffy, so much of it takes place at night, they'd have to do a lot of night shoots, and she was too young. They needed an actor who didn't have to like worry about labor laws that way.
It's like a My So-Called Life thing with Claire Danes.
Exactly. And so and it's just so funny that if it weren't a vampire show, it's like, well, it's gonna be dark a lot, so we kind of need somebody. So she was in the back of everybody's mind. And then the other, and it makes, you can so see it, is if not for that, it would have been Selma Blair.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah. And they really kind of occupy, like, if you think about Cruel Intentions, she Katie Holmes could have played Selma Blair's character in that. They have very similar.
I have to get this off my chest. I know I texted you this last night. Joey is not a fucking tomboy. In every summary of this pilot, of this show, she is referred to as a tomboy. That is not a fucking tomboy.
Well, she rows a boat. You said it exactly what they actually mean.
Yeah, she's a brunette.
Yeah, 100%.
She has brown hair, and she's not always in a floral dress. That does not a tomboy make. People.
Well, she doesn't wear makeup until her sister puts it on her.
Oh my God, she's 15.
She rows a boat, and she's friends with a boy.
Brown hair.
She climbs a ladder.
Her arms and legs work.
Yeah, she rows a boat and climbs a ladder.
She doesn't need to be carried everywhere.
Exactly. She's a total tomboy.
She's not.
And she's got a boy's name.
Oh my God, that just drove me crazy. Every time I read a description, I was like, you don't know what that word means.
She's not friends with any girls, and then when one girl shows up and tries desperately to be her friend, she turns into Kim Kelly from Freaks and Geeks for some reason and is so mean.
Yes. Still doesn't make her a tomboy. Just makes her mean.
It just makes her a mean brunette.
Yeah. Which is also a trope.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyway, I just had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's we don't know what we're doing with women in TV still, but yeah. So, okay, there's so much that actually the making of the show I think is really fascinating and where it went, and there's stuff I didn't know about how tumultuous after it was huge for season 1. Season 2 took a dip. They kind of Kevin Williamson left, and I'm putting that in quotes because I read a book written by, I'm blanking on his name right now, Steppenkoff, something like that, who wrote about kind of taking over the show in season 3 and what a nightmare it was and how long it took to kind of wrangle things. And it does get really weird. There's a lot of kind of soap opera type stuff that happens around then when they weren't really sure what to do with the show.
Yeah.
But in that book, he always puts Kevin Williamson left in quotes. And so it seems like there was a lot of stuff going on that I think is really fascinating, but we're just here to talk about the pilot. So
yeah. And I think anytime a show goes beyond 3 seasons, you're going to have a chaos season or 2. You're going to have weird plot twists that are kind of people reaching for something new when instead you could have ended after 3 seasons and tied it off neatly.
They do. I will say, for anybody who is thinking about continuing watching, the show gets a proper ending. It gets the people who are making the show in the final season wrote their finale, and then they brought Kevin Williamson in to write a kind of finale after that. So there's a season finale and then there's a series finale. And so you do get here are the people who've really been with the show the longest, how they think it should end. And then here's Kevin Williamson, who created this, who really knew these characters in the beginning, what he would have wanted. And they work together. They don't negate. I think it's really interesting.
That's nice.
And that makes it, for me, it's I think it's, if you liked this first episode, even in kind of a whatever way,
yeah,
I think it's worth sticking around.
No, I think that's nice. I just think any show that goes this many seasons, and 6 isn't that many for the time, but when you're trying to innovate a plot around the same 4 characters,
especially when it's these people started out as teenagers, and you can't, they can't in a way that Friends, the people in Friends can stay 30 somethings kind of forever. You can't have that with these actors. Also were between, for the most part, the lead 4 were really between 17 and 19. They weren't too far off. You haven't met Jack yet, but I think he's 25 playing a 17-year-old. So it gets a little, but
yeah. But also, from what I know, this show really kicked off a bunch of their careers.
Totally.
And after a few years, you're getting other offers, and it's harder and harder to keep people around.
Yeah, the only one who had done anything up to this point of the main ensemble was Joshua Jackson, because he'd done the Mighty Ducks movies, obviously. Did you get to Detention yet, that episode?
Yeah. I think that was the last one I got through the whole thing.
Breakfast Club spoof.
Yeah, the Breakfast Club.
It's really
Club
fun.
Of it all.
And he makes a reference about that one actor who did those duck movies.
Yes. I don't think I caught the full context of that.
Isn't that fun? He's talking about himself.
Yes.
Kevin Williamson loves to go meta. He loves it.
Well, and it's, I read some article this morning that was talking about the video store of it all, and how it's so funny because those guys a few years earlier, or in a different place or in a different show, were Tarantino obsessives.
It's funny that they should be.
I mean,
Dawson thinks he's that kind of guy. Dawson thinks he's like,
but it's Spielberg.
It's fucking Spielberg.
Yeah. But like we've talked about this. I worked in a video store. You worked in a video store. We were both friends with and a part of groups of people that were film obsessives and like quoted things incessantly, referenced things in conversation in daily life, like nonstop. Like this, it's funny to see this in such a like uncool way.
I know.
Because,
I love it.
Everyone I knew was obsessed with like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and all of these like,
Kevin Smith, who for us is like,
Well, it's funny. Not to distract us a little bit more, but I did think about Kevin Smith while watching this because of the hyper-verbal nature of the kids, right? The fact that they're speaking like they're in their 40s, like that hyper-verbal thing was also a Kevin Smith thing. Every character in his movies is speechifying the whole time, and so are these kids. It was really, I kept thinking about Kevin Smith while I was watching this. It's like an alt version of Kevin Smith, or Kevin Smith is the alt version of this very normcore film nerd.
Yeah, there's Greg Berlanti, who was one of the showrunners. Said initially it seemed to me a little weird that the characters all spoke like adults, but over time I sort of fell in love with the fact that they had this kind of heightened language that was their own, but their emotions and all the things they were going through still made them very much teenagers. The tension, I really liked. And then Tara Ariano, who is a co-founder of a website called Television Without Pity. Emily Nussbaum, who's like the TV critic, like cites that as like something that taught her how to be the writer that she is now. It was like a big deal. It started out as the Dawson's Creek hate watch site.
I don't think I knew that. Actually, no, I did know that, and then I'd forgotten it.
Well, now you get to remember.
Because I don't know, I would listen to a podcast not that long ago that was about the rise of Television Without Pity.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But she said none of the teens sounded like teens. They all just sounded like characters on a TV show. They were very hyperverbal. That's the word everybody uses. That became the charm of the show and what people liked about it, that it was this heightened reality. That was annoying to me at the time, but ultimately Dawson was a problem. Dawson was just such a pill, and she's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at the time, I liked it. At the time, it didn't feel. I was young. I was, like I said, I was 12, so I wasn't really thinking about it that way. I think I was just kind of like, oh, I can't wait to be able to talk like teenagers talk, But looking back as an adult, I'm like, oh, I think it's really charming that they have access to this language, but aren't thinking sophisticated thoughts. They really aren't.
But I mean, that kind of rings true to a certain demographic. Like, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like we were both pretty overly literate, stupid kids with ADHD who read a lot and probably could think in these types of sentences.
And were annoying to be around.
Yes.
Yeah.
And still not have any clue as to what was going on around us.
And thought, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is, I kind of think all you need to know about Dawson in particular is that he's got this collection of Spielberg posters on his walls that he's got
chronologically.
They're not chronological.
They're by box office.
They're numerically arranged. He is a 15-year-old boy with a color purple poster and a Schindler's List poster. There's just it's all.
If you walk into some guy's bedroom and he's got a Schindler's List poster, you turn around and you leave. I'm sorry. You go home. But there's something wrong there.
But it is like, just to actually jump into it, this first scene is, I mean, I think it does everything.
It does it, I mean, to be honest, it does it in the most kind of ham-handed way, but it does what it needs to do.
I think it's really sweet that you see that they've...
It's, for the first time watcher who's not in depth in this show for years, it is jarring. It feels a little bit like, whoa, okay, this is how we're doing this. All right. And like I said, I watched 6 episodes, so obviously it didn't turn me off, but it was...
You mean the language of it?
The language of it.
I'm talking about 2 teenagers right before high school. You can tell that this is these are conversations they've been having for 10 years. They're watching a movie they've watched together 1,000,000 times. They both kind of know it by heart. Dawson is the film nerd, though. Joey thinks she kind of knows. She's like, it won the Oscar that year, right? Because she's been listening to Dawson. Right. But he's the actual film nerd. Like, the ease between them, the thing that makes things uncomfortable is Joey inserting this new thing that Dawson clearly is not thinking about.
But that's what I mean. So at 15 years old, I know that I'm hacking at the underlying premise of the whole show. But 15 years old, still sleeping in bed with your best friend of the opposite sex the sex that you are attracted to, is a little bit hard for me to, and I got past it, obviously. I kept watching, but I was like, wait. Like,
I think part of it is this universe is supposed to be really, I think I said idyllic, but like, for example, something I'll point out to you that you will now continue to notice forever is that, like, anytime they're outside, twinkle lights everywhere, even if it's a place that doesn't make sense.
Oh, yeah. The sky is pink all the time.
It is always
all the time.
It is always dusk. It is beautiful. The sunset.
Talk about color casts.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The creek, the sun is always rising or setting on the creek no matter what time of day it is.
And it's always pink.
Everything it's because it's supposed to be, I think the tagline was literally, it's the end of something simple and the beginning of everything else. So it is sort of unbelievable, but that's kind of the point. Like, you join them in this, like, beautiful little bubble.
Totally. Yeah, I have a couple of things that I wrote down about that. So when Kevin Williamson was talking about it, he said he called it like that it had a fantasy voice and was both idealistic and a little dreamy. But then I found this other description that I really loved. It said, the kids are sweet, tame, and the fairy children of summertime in a postcard reality. The town of Capeside, Massachusetts, was mostly played by Wilmington, North Carolina, so everyone feels like a blue-blooded wasp, but also coastal utopian southerners from a Nicholas Sparks novel.
100%.
Everyone's got a boat. Every backyard has a private dock. At one point, Dawson sees Jen sitting on her dock. The sky is red as the memory of lipstick. The creek is serenity blue.
100%.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's also a really great analysis of description of the scene where Jen is going out the window and Joey's coming in.
Oh, it's so good. That's what I mean. This show is it's pretty thoughtful, even though we kind of treat it like a dumb teen soap.
Well, and that's why I think I got the appeal too. Like, I'm quibbling with the realistic part of it, but like, it says, with Dawson off screen inside, it's a literal romantic triangle filmed by director Steve Miner like a Saturday Evening Post cover. It's an old-fashioned vision. Summer. The jean shorts, the house as white as Tom Sawyer's proverbial fence, the blonde outgoing while the brunette's incoming. Like, it's true. Like, I'm not immune to the charms of, the scenery and the nostalgia and the sweetness of it all. The Cape was, I know that this isn't actually filmed on the Cape really, it's filmed in North Carolina, but it's supposed to be the Cape. They keep mentioning Hyannis, and like, the Cape was this mythical place to me as a teenager or as a kid, because my mom had like a friend that lived there. We went there one time and we stayed in this beautiful old Victorian house just off the beach in winter. And it was like, they had a big Irish setter and like wood floors and dark rooms with like books, and that to me is the Cape. And so this was like a slightly different, like a summer version of that. So I did like enjoy the sort of fantasy part of it.
Yeah, and this is like beautiful downtown where you might run into your friend. Like, Joey's walking down the street and Dawson just kind of bikes up to her at one point. Like,
it also felt very Nantucket, but with a little less money. Like Martha's Vineyard probably would be a good comparable.
And it's important, too, that for Dawson in particular, because it's, again, nobody cares about Dawson, but it's his creek, it's his life. Joey points out to him how perfect it is all the time, because that has to start to get punctured now as he hits adulthood, right? So, like, his mom being the evening news anchor. Back to you, Bob. And his parents are, I think the stuff with his mom and dad is actually pretty interesting, because like, they are clearly in love. You can tell.
She's bored.
But right, exactly. And it's it's just like everything happens all at once for him. He's had this really boring, kind of simple, no ripples on the water kind of life, and then everything changes all at once. His, you know,
well,
so
hormones fuck it all up as usual. Nothing new there. Tale as old as time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like there's something genuinely interesting about that, I think. And then so we've got Dawson. That's as much as I kind of care to talk about him. We've got his best friend Joey. And again, Dawson's had this perfect life. So the fact that his best friend's mom recently, within the last few years, died of cancer. Her dad is in prison for a conspiracy to traffic marijuana in excess of 10,000 pounds.
Her dad was like a kingpin.
In Capeside, Massachusetts.
Her dad was a drug lord.
It's so funny.
It's a lot of marijuana.
That's so much marijuana.
That's a lot of marijuana. I mean,
and everybody in Capeside is 90 years old except for these kids.
I know. A lot
of glaucoma, I guess. I don't know. It's really, so funny.
It was one of those, like, we're in this idyllic, beautiful place where the sky is always pink and the sun is always rising or setting. And then you get this country song of a kid where it's like,
truly.
She literally says, and she says it in that way. She's like, she talks about how her mom died of cancer. She lives with her pregnant sister and her sister's black boyfriend. They cannot stop talking about how her boyfriend is black.
It's so funny because it's like, this is maybe one of the first black people we've seen in any of these shows who gets 100%. More than like one line and isn't just like, even with the movies we were watching at the time, he's like, he has a goal and stuff that exists outside. We only get him for a little bit, but like he's a person. He's a person. He's a character. You see, he and Joey talk to each other. Like he's not just there to talk through her sister. Like they do a pretty good job, but
he's
they won't.
He's not a snarky radio DJ.
Yeah, but they won't stop. Which I know it's supposed to be like, this is how the town, this like really whitewashed whatever town who's never had any, like everything just kind of happens the way it's supposed to. So like Joey's life is this little sore spot for everybody. But it's like, okay, like, we get it.
I just love how they're like, oh, we'll get to Jen obviously, but Jen is from the big city and she's fast and her life and blah, blah, blah. Joey's dad is a drug lord.
Yeah. 10,000
so much pot.
They should have had him selling. The writer's room for this is just so funny to think about because it's like they probably weren't allowed because it should have been like less drugs, but something more like heroin, a little less, but heroin.
Late 90s, could have been heroin, could have been coke, like.
But they're just not. Nope. 10,000 pounds of marijuana. It is like 5 tons. It's like, is that what you're Googling? Because it's like 5 tons of marijuana. It's so much.
It's a couple of cars worth.
Yeah.
I was trying to Google how much is 10,000 pounds of marijuana worth.
Well, in 1998, I don't know.
But instead I'm getting how many pounds of weed can you get with $10,000?
Also a good question.
Yeah.
It's just the funniest thing. The girl's got it rough. Like,
that's so funny.
It's really good. It is. I even kind of talked about it last week a little bit. Like, I think I said the show really, I think of it as being pretty wholesome and straightforward, but it's not. Like, no. I was thinking back of and some of this, I won't tell you some of the stuff that happens, but the show really does some stuff. And this is a hint that it's sort of been there all along. But that's kind of Joey's whole thing. She's
clearly in love with her best friend. That's like her main.
Man, I think
at least in this pilot, she is clearly in love with her best friend. I don't know.
I think
enough
she
about
thinks
later, but
she is. But I think the conversation at the end of this episode where Dawson says, like, when I saw you wearing the lipstick, I thought you looked pretty. And she kind of like, she gets a little bashful and he's like, but it didn't go beyond that. That's it. And then she says something like, it's not that I wanted to be the one holding your hand. I just didn't want her to be holding your hand. It's like a possession thing for sure. Totally. I think these two are so enmeshed that like even if they're not actually in love and don't actually want to be together, it's really hard for them to imagine their lives, the other one's life, existing in a way where they're not the only thing in it.
Yeah, I could see it both ways. I could see her as being like in love with him and denying it, or just possessive in that way that you are of a friend that's like your person.
Yeah, I think she's still figuring it out too. I think she definitely thinks that she is. And when you're 15, that's kind of all that matters. Like,
she's also, for someone that looks that sweet and talks like a child, like her voice is very something. Mm-hmm. She's fucking rude. She has no filter. She has no filter whatsoever.
Which, again, is something I hated about her. I always say nobody cares about Dawson. Nobody cares about Dawson. I only start to care about Joey around about season 3. I think she's kind of insufferable early on. But I wonder how much of that is... I was also a young person without much of a filter who kind of just said shit sometimes. She's like pretty unrestrained, and it's like the way she talks to Jen. Again, I love Jen, and Jen tries. I sort of remember them as painting her as being trouble from day one. But she tries so hard to be Joey's friend. She's like reasonable with everybody. She's like really trying. And people are just assuming things about her, and Joey's the worst offender of that. Totally.
Yeah, no, she, in this first episode anyway, she comes off as just she's just trying to figure shit out and make friends.
And kick her cigarette habit. And set boundaries with Grams.
She's an atheist, Andrea. Did you know? She doesn't believe in God.
It's so funny because, like...
I'm firm about my beliefs. Please respect them.
I'm of 12 different minds with Jen, because I kind of feel like good for you at 15 to be able to set those boundaries. Yeah. But also, like, your grandma's husband is dying, like, and she's being, like, annoying about how she's being, but, like, maybe just say grace and go to church. Like, who cares?
But teenagers are assholes. Mm-hmm. They're very self-involved.
I love her signs. They kind of like hide her hard past in this episode, right? Yeah. Because Joey asks her if she's a virgin. She says yes. There's all of that stuff. But she's not like these kids from the creek because she drinks black coffee. She's quitting smoking.
Right.
She doesn't eat breakfast. She's an atheist. She's an atheist. She says the word penis in front of Grams.
Yeah.
I also kind of feel like Grams, just say penis. She'll go to church. I believe Jen. If you say penis, Jen's going to go to church. Just say it. You're both very stubborn.
Grams is very stubborn. Yeah. So I guess when maybe we're moving on to Jen, the thing that was hard for me about her has nothing to do with the writing or the show itself. It is that Michelle Williams looks like she grew out of that creek like a flower. Yeah. Like she looks like she...
Well, I think she's from Montana in real life.
She is.
And
she looks like she grew up on a rowboat. Like that she is made of cattails. Like that girl does not look like she's from New York City. No. She does not talk like she's from New York City. She does not dress like she's from New York City in the late 90s. She looks like a country girl.
It is funny they play her that way because even her haircut, it's all of their hair is dated, but hers isn't like, well, that's how the cool girls were. Like, it is a weird, but I would move to New York City in 1999, a year after this. If I showed you a picture of me in 1998, a New York adjacent person, no one I know. Right. Well, she was 15, but still
does not matter.
Look like Nelly. Like her hair should be done up. It should be big. Like,
I think visually you could swap Katie Holmes and her and it would make much more sense.
It's a little true, yeah. But then she can be, but Michelle Williams is so not a tomboy and Joey is a tomboy. So.
No, she is not.
But you're right. Michelle Williams is so like...
she's so blonde and cute and perfect and it just makes very little sense.
Yeah, it's very funny.
I'll get over it.
They were apparently really had their hands kind of tied with how they cast this show. Apparently Kevin Williamson and other people on the show were pitching a less white cast, a less pretty cast. Apparently Michelle Williams, she's one of the most beautiful people on the planet now, but like apparently at the time she was kind of a hard sell.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
She's like a little cherub.
Like, yeah. I guess they kind of probably, I don't know what they wanted, but
yeah.
But I think this cast is exactly who it ended up needing to be. So.
Well, what's really funny is like, well, we're not there yet. I'll talk about it when we get to Pacey. Anything else we need to say about Jen?
I think that's all we get really for her at this point, right?
Yeah, we see her kind of immediately connecting with Dawson, which I found that believable. Like, I found their sort of teenage attraction to each other, like, it felt natural. Like, you meet someone at that age and you're like, I don't know why, but you're now my person, and I want to spend my life with you because no reason.
Right,
just hormones.
Well, and he definitely thinks, even though he couldn't be more part of this creek, that he's like destined for greater things, and Jen represents that as being a city girl. And
right. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
He just says just the most embarrassing stuff. I do really like that about Joey. When you watch Joey's face whenever he's talking to Jen, and she's like, I can't fucking believe this guy. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she and during those times, like, Jen also seems very aware of Dawson's innocence and idiocy. And like she thinks it's cute and charming, and I think, you know, we're supposed to think, oh, she wants a nice guy and that's why she's attracted to Dawson. But I think you can see them appreciating each other. I feel like that was one of the things that actually rang true to me, was like their sort of stilted teenage rapport, like kind of made sense to me.
Yeah, I think so. That feels right.
Should we talk about Pacey?
It's just not fair that we only watch the pilot for this show, because all you know about Pacey is that he
sucks in this episode. He's such a 15-year-old boy.
He's such a 15-year-old boy.
Oh my God. I mean, they both are, but he's not given the additional depth or charm or sweetness that Dawson is given in this episode. Like, I know due to your obsession with Joshua Jackson and Pacey in this show that he does improve, because if he was like this the whole time, I would be very scared for you.
Yeah,
but
no, he's everything.
But like, judging by the pilot, I mean, even judging by the first like 6 episodes, which is what I've seen so far, like, he sucks. He's like a obnoxious 15-year-old, full of himself but also insecure. Like,
when they pitched the show, it was when Kevin Williamson pitched the show, it was just Dawson and Joey, and somebody in the room said Dawson should have like a confidant, a friend he can bounce things off of, and he should be like a Jim Belushi type.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah, that tracks.
And so he was like, here's the teen version of that, I guess.
Yeah. All he thinks about is sex and girls, which is not far off from any 15-year-old, right. But he doesn't have anything else going on yet, you know? The first thing he says to Dawson about Jen is, are you going to nail her?
Yeah. He says something like, better men would be nailing her by now. And it's just like...
He's watched too many movies, just like, but he's watching the wrong ones. He's watching, like, you know, he's probably incessantly quoting. I mean, in my life, he would be obsessively quoting Tarantino, but yeah.
Well, he's kind of the product of the movies that Freaks and Geeks is acting as a response to, right?
Right. That's true.
He's just so sex obsessed. You don't know anything about his home life yet, right?
No,
at this point,
not at all.
Have you even been in his house?
No, and honestly, I'm at like episode 6 or 7, and the only thing that I know about Pacey beyond his affair with a 36-year-old teacher is that, or his abuse by a 36-year-old teacher, more accurately, is he has an older brother who's a cop who is somewhat attractive, but kind of obnoxious. That's all I know.
Yeah, you'll learn more about Pacey. And again, I don't remember if I said this while we were recording or not. I have to find that article because I loved it so much that talks about how if you think about the fact that Pacey from episode 1 is a victim of a child predator and then every choice he makes is going to be filtered through that, right?
Yeah.
Like
and watching this in my 40s, that is the only way I'm going to be able to think of him.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that we don't see anyone in his family for the first 5 episodes tells me that there's something there.
Exactly.
Also, like, you just assume, okay, we've seen Jen's grandma, we've seen Joey's family, we've seen Dawson's family, we have seen nothing. Pacey is just a floating person that doesn't seem to have any family attachments. And so that seems intentional.
He's funnier and has more personality than Dawson to start with, whether
you like his sense of humor or not.
I think he's given more to do that way. Something that I didn't say at the top that maybe I should have is not only were these actors brand new, but so was the network they were on. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they had like no budget. And because of that, like seasoned writers and like show creators were not lining up to work on this show. So the writer's room is brand new. They're filming in Wilmington, Delaware. They're filming in Wilmington, North Carolina.
They're filming at Joe Biden's complex.
They're filming in North Carolina, which now lots of things have filmed there, like One Tree Hill. But at the time it was just them. They're like really in this weird little like really uncharted waters in so many ways. And so it's like the fact that this first season happens at all is kind of a miracle, I think, and that it was such a success. And so I think a misstep like how they handle Pacey is sort of a miracle at all. Like that the show didn't fuck up worse in the beginning.
It's pretty bad though.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at it now, they try to, it's not the fact that this happens in the show. It is the way they play it. Mm-hmm. They play it as a romance. As like, because I got to the scene where she says she's moving to fucking Rochester. I know we're only talking about the pilot, but she moves off to Rochester to find another fucking victim. Mm-hmm. And it is played like they are star-crossed lovers that have been, cut down in their prime by that pesky school board and their rules. Like, he is played as the aggressor in a lot of this.
Yeah, it's really bad.
He says, "Hey man, Video Woman is my new English teacher. Okay, you, me, the movies tonight. We are stalking a faculty member." And Dawson's like, "Dude, negative." And he says, "What? I actually have the possibility of losing my virginity in a high-level fantasy fashion."
These are the messages that teen boys were fed.
I know.
Here's the thing,
but
Mary, you said to me in a text that there's a version of this that would be a true crime story. And it's Mary
Kay Letourneau.
Was only a year before this.
That's crazy. You told me that and I was like, okay,
it feels to me like they are two separate eras, but it is like this is still in the news.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Do you want some other context?
Yes.
For this? So This aired January 20th, 1998. I was 11 years.
Yes, you're a child. Go ahead.
364 days old or whatever. I turned 12. I came into school. We learned that Monica Lewinsky was claiming to have had sex with President Bill Clinton.
Wow.
So we got Mary Kay Letourneau. We've always been sex obsessed, but I really think like it was.
Yeah, it was in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was almost out on Pacey. Says, look, it is a fact that a large percentage of older women are attracted to young boys on the verge of manhood. It keeps them feeling young. That is not a fact.
It's not a fact. It's not a fact at all.
A fact.
But again, I think it is
as
the message.
A woman, yeah.
It's a message that teen boys were getting.
I know, but as an adult woman, oh my God, ew.
I know.
Ew.
The speech he gives her at the end, though.
Horrifying.
Where he is like, yeah, you're, on the precipice of 40 and you're starting to, I have the script up, but it is brutal.
My
and
God.
I kind of think, again, that's not every woman, though he seems to think that is at the beginning, but I think that is her. I think she
is like fucked in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is pretty gross that that's the speech that pushes her over the edge.
That is the speech where you push him into the water and you walk away and you hope he doesn't drown and you get charged with murder. Like,
yeah, truly.
It is straight out of a movie, right? Like, he's seeing himself as this, like, young, you know, they mentioned The Graduate earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I'd like to clear up this misunderstanding. And he said, I understand you perfectly well, Ms. Jacobs. She says, I'm so sorry. He says, you should be. You're a liar. How can you say you were just renting a movie? Because it's the truth. And he says, this is so gross. It's a crock. The truth is, you're a well put together knockout of a woman who's feeling a little insecure about hitting 40. So when a young virile boy, such as myself, flirts with you, you enjoy it. You entice it. You fantasize about what it would be like to be with that young boy on the verge of manhood. Again,
Mm-hmm.
Because it helps you stay feeling attractive, makes the aging process a little more bearable. Well, let me tell you something, you blew it, lady, because I have the best sex you'll never have. If a 15-year-old said that to me,
I know.
I would, if I was standing next to a body of water, I would push him in it.
100%. And he'd have it coming.
And I would call his parents.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
I would call his parents and say, your child needs help.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a disturbing.
I mean, the difference, though, is that maybe it's because you're a teacher. Oh, hold on.
She's a teacher.
Maybe as, like, educators we have. Oh, wait.
Yeah. Exactly.
Huh.
Exactly. This woman is mentally ill.
It's really bad.
Like, it's so much worse because she's a teacher. It is so much worse.
Mm-hmm. It's bad no matter what, but it is.
Because,
again, it's literally Mary Kay Letourneau. There's no...
Like, I don't talk about my job very often on here, and I don't want to. But the people that I teach are technically adults.
Mm-hmm.
They are still fucking children. And if one of them said this to me, I would be, like, I don't know, reporting it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be calling their parents because of FERPA, but I would be dealing with it in a legal, like, structure. Because, oh, no. And she's just like, oh, yeah, that's what makes me want to make out with you.
Mm-hmm.
You child. Oh.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Did you think, is there a little bit of a vibe, especially knowing that when Pacey walks into Dawson's house and his mom and dad are making out on the coffee table, he compliments her hair and she seems a little bashful about it.
I think we're supposed to think that older
adults.
I think we're supposed to think that older women are attracted to this child with weird bangs.
He's just so charming.
And he's not. That's the thing. He's not charming. Like, I understand he becomes charming. I understand Joshua Jackson, again, attractive man.
But he's just a shitty 15-year-old boy at this point.
He is not remotely charming.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's really weird.
I do not understand it. This was the thing that I could not stop thinking about. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, that's actually partly what made me keep watching. Because I was like, oh, well, how are they going to resolve this? Please tell me it's somewhere, like, reasonable. And then, spoiler alert, it is not.
No. There's an essay called Creek Theses by Justin Taylor. It's in a book called Little Boxes. And it's all essays about television. And Justin Taylor says, here's a thesis. All of Dawson's Creek makes infinitely more sense and is significantly more enjoyable if you stop thinking about it as a show about Dawson Leary and start thinking about it as a show about Pacey and Joey and the grinding misery of growing up working class in a snow globe town where all of your friends are well-to-do.
Yeah. I do get that.
Too.
Yeah. I do see that.
Yeah. Is it like if Dawson was having sex with a teacher, his parents would be involved. You would know, you know what I mean? Like, just the way that this is dealt with for Pacey is so different.
Yeah. No, I definitely saw that. I mean, like, granted that maybe because I watched a few more episodes and I got to the one where Joey lies about her everything because of the guy on the boat that she meets.
Here's the thing, too. So I think it's in this essay where this author points it out, but it's such a fact. Maybe it's not this essay. It doesn't matter. But because it is just a fact of the show and you don't need someone to tell you this, that it's so funny that Joey is just a liar. That's like part of her personality.
Yeah. Yeah. She just, and I definitely, you can feel the class distinction between Dawson and Joey and between Dawson and Pacey. Jen is a little more, you're not sure, because she's with her grandmother and we don't know anything about her parents. And it's like, could her parents be like really rich Manhattanites? Yes. You know, and she was sent to this small town. So, but I do see like Joey and Pacey as the like poor kids or like working class kids.
Yeah.
Because she has a job. She works, in the same place as her sister and her brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And other ones don't have jobs.
Right. Well, they work at the video store, but it's...
Oh, yeah, they do. But that doesn't feel like a job.
No, they work there because they want to. Like, it has those... Or Pacey would need a job, but Dawson 100%.
Just wants to hang out. He
probably also gets allowance, annoyingly.
Yeah, he just wants to hang out, get movies for free. I love nostalgia. There was definitely part of me that just wanted to watch them open and close those VHS cases. I can feel
it. I can hear it.
Those plastic cases.
There is nothing that feels or sounds like that.
There's something about it, man. Like, it's like picking up an old rotary phone or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a solid... I used to make fun of my dad because he was an antique car guy. And he always talked about the sound that the door of an older car makes, that thunk that the metal makes when you close it, and how it's different and how it feels solid. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what I'm saying about videotape cases from the 90s. I could talk about this all day. Those VHS cases were so tough because you had to like throw them in a bin. Mm-hmm. Like you had to throw them through the window slot to like put them in the return bin, and it had to keep the shatter type plastic safe. That and like the rewind machine. Mm. We've talked about this before.
Because you were going to start...
I was going to start a TikTok account that was just rewinding VHS tapes. And I still think I should.
Yeah, I would watch.
In my free time.
Would. What are we rewinding today? Oh, it's while you were sleeping.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's good.
Really good.
Somebody needs to take that idea before I do it, because I don't have time to do that.
It is really good.
But yeah.
Anyway, back to Dawson's Creek. I think, did we do it all?
I think we kind of did. I mean, like, I'm sure that you have other things to say probably about the impact of this show and of like.
Well, we have to talk music and theme song. We have,
okay.
That's big.
That made me so sad that I had to watch it with that stupid replacement theme song. Like, even I, who never watched this show, clearly know what the theme song was and can hear it in my head over the...
it's funny because we all kind of hated it, but it's also like, how dare you?
Yeah, no, I know. It's so bad. Mm-hmm. It's so bad.
Though they did keep, at least in the... So I did okay, real quick. So Miss Jacobs kisses Pacey. Jen and Dawson almost kiss, but don't, because Grams is watching. And Jen says, like, I'm just going to pretend I kissed you, which I think is actually kind of cute.
Yeah, it's cute.
And then Joey is hiding in his closet, which is so funny. And it's the one time in this episode where I kind of like her, where I like, because it's such a like little kid thing to do. Yeah. And you know that they probably like treated his closet like a little clubhouse when they were growing up.
Of course. Well, there's the Jaws thing where they're like in the closet, like going through the Jaws script or something.
So it's like it's a comforting place for her with a girl who's had a pretty tumultuous upbringing, and so it makes sense that and it's probably really difficult for her to be like, this has been my safe space and now I said something and now it's not anymore. And they I think that's all really relatable. But then she says just the craziest thing, which is like, because she wants him to prove things don't have to change, despite that conversation that we talked about earlier,
right?
Of the like, well, I thought you looked really pretty. I didn't want you to be holding my hand. I just didn't want you holding hers, that whole thing. And then she says, like, so prove it. If we, really are going to be best friends, you can tell me anything. Tell me when you walk your dog.
Yeah.
And we know, again, that that's a euphemism for when do you masturbate, because, the censors wouldn't let that through. There's also one little note. They plan, it's another thing that I think is kind of smart, is like, we know what she's saying, obviously, but earlier on in the episode, Dawson tells Pacey, when Pacey's like freaking out about wanting to have sex with Miss Jacobs, Dawson's like, go home, walk your dog. And he's saying, like, go home, jerk off, like, get over it. But it's just like language between all of them. This is a euphemism they're comfortable using. So he knows exactly what Joey's talking about. But I like that early on in the episode when he says, walk your dog, Pacey's not like, what? Like, they don't have to clarify it. I think it's a really smart way to like establish this conversation. But he can't do it. She leaves. she's rowing away heartbroken, but then he leans out and he says, do you have the script in front of you? Because he says, in the morning, usually with Katie Couric, I believe is the line.
Yeah.
Horrifying. She loves it. She's thrilled. She's never been happier. Nobody has ever been happier than Joey Potter learning when Dawson Leary jerks off to a news anchor.
Yes. Thank you. I know. It's horrifying. There's so much mom shit in here.
That is a wild thing to say.
Yeah. And the fact that all the women in this show that are over the age of like 25 look and dress like they're in a late 70s beach movie. Like it's very like,
she likes big hair.
It's the big hair, the soft Vaseline on the lens, like filter, the flowy dresses.
Yeah, it's weird.
It does not strike me as 98 in the older women. They're definitely like these sort of almost like men's magazine fantasy women.
Yeah. But the like thing though of this scene for me is that Pretender song is I'll Stand By You. It is. Oh yeah. It tells you exactly how to feel in that scene, even if you're kind of like, this is weird, but you're like, oh right, I'm supposed to be moved by this.
Right.
And that song is from the original soundtrack. They kept we'll talk about the theme song, but most of the soundtrack, not all of it, but in this episode, everything is the same. There are a few, I don't think you've gotten to them yet, but there are a few that are horrifyingly that they just couldn't get the rights for, I guess, that they really fuck up.
But Chumbawamba was in the original?
Chumbawamba was in the original. Sophie B. Hawkins is everything to me because of Dawson's Creek. This song is everything to me.
Yeah.
As I Lay Me Down is like, like I said, it's everything. It's Hey Pretty Girl by Bodines, As I Lay Me Down, Tub Thumping. Perfect for the first day of school in 1998. Funny. Yeah, it makes me laugh every time. They use it more than once. Mercy Me by Say So, Good Mother by Jan Arden, and then I'll Stand By You by the Pretenders. Like, that's a pretty solid.
Yeah. Man, they really knew how to put music in TV shows back then. I mean, one thing we didn't really even barely mention with Freaks and Geeks was the theme song. Mm-hmm. Like, I mentioned it briefly, but like, that is the perfect tone to strike for that show.
Mm-hmm. I feel the same way about I Don't Want to Wait, but I did read in that same Creek Theses essay, there is one of the other theses that this person puts forth is that actually the replacement theme song, which I think sucks, is a better tonal fit. And
I don't know about that.
It's so funny. I'm just going to read a little bit of it because I think it's in the same way that this person put such a pin on the Snow Globe Town thing of Pacey and Joey's life. The epistemological function of opening credits with notes towards an epistemology of the creek itself. Due to a licensing rights issue, the streaming episodes had to replace some of the songs they'd used in the original broadcast, including Paula Cole's iconic theme song. Instead of that song, the opening credits are scored by Jan Arden's Run Like Mad, a song this person had never heard of before they started streaming Dawson's Creek. Now brace yourself for heresy. Not only is Run Like Mad a better song than I Don't Want to Wait, it offers a far better entree to the world of Dawson's Creek. This essay is long, so I won't read all of it, but I'll say this for I Don't Want to Wait, and I don't think there aren't any spoilers in here for you, and I think that even if all you watch was the first episode, you'll get this. Mm-hmm. I'll say this for I Don't Want to Wait. It works on a tonal level because it is overwrought to the verge of whininess and a little stupid despite lyrics designed to convey maturity by dint of an ability to articulate desire.
There you go.
Yeah. The most naive thing about it is how frank it thinks it is being. And in all these ways, it is an exact match for the show whose icon it became. It sounds to a certain kind of teenager like a battle cry, but it's basically meaningless. Who would want to wait for their lives to be over? What would that sort of waiting even be? We are rallied to opposition, but against what? I'm going to read one more little paragraph, and then we can get back.
This is my shit. Keep it coming.
So this essay is incredible. There's more in it. These are just the two things that
this essay is what our podcast aspires to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
Moreover, Dawson's Creek is a show about deferral and refusal. It is this in its entirety, at every level, in every plot arc, to the very fiber of its being. It is positively Foucauldian in its approach to producing power relations and in the premium it places on self-regulation. Never more than when it comes to sex. And
wow.
then here is a spoiler, here is another spoiler, and then it's like Melrose Place. But instead of getting steamier and more convoluted, the show backs off from every single erotic gauntlet it has thrown and spends the whole rest of season 1, indeed the next several seasons, trying to shove the sex genie back in the bottle.
Oh, wow.
And you can feel that. It's like, yeah, it says Dawson's Creek never loses sight of sexual repression, refusal, denial as some kind of bizarre attitudinal behavioral ideal.
Well, I mean, if we are looking at this show as Dawson's show, which is by name what it is, he is the most repressed. He is the most like...
He's so annoyed that everybody's so obsessed with sex.
Yeah.
Because when he says, again, I keep saying everything you need to know about Dawson, but it is about his relationship with Spielberg, tells you everything when he's like, oh, if it's so important, how come Spielberg never had a sex scene?
Right.
It's like, because he's a square who's trying to appeal to, and again, I love...
Yeah.
There are a lot of Spielberg movies that are everything to me, but like there's a reason Dawson like, and it's not a good one necessarily.
No. And I haven't seen The Fabelmans, but you know, I can't holding up Steven Spielberg via his movies as something to aspire to is a little weird and a little off-putting. I kind of want to read that book now that you've said that. You have to send me a link to it.
Yeah,
and I will read it.
And it's great. And there are other essays in here I didn't get a chance to read in their entirety like I did this one, but the book for our listeners is called Little Boxes, 12 Writers on Television, a very special episode about what it means to have that blue glow as part of your cultural DNA. Comedy, drama, serial, daytime.
That's awesome. Yeah. I totally want to read that. I feel like in some way, like I said, that's kind of what our podcast aspires to be, is this like, you know, if you listen to all of it, it should build on itself and talk about these different aspects of these shows and how they connect to each other, are influenced by each other, are similar and different.
Did you read this quote already? I think you maybe did. Dawson's Creek in all its wonderfully emotional glory would make it okay for teens to feel everything. Did you find this?
No, I did. I think I found it, but I didn't read it.
Devastation of rejection, the euphoria of a first kiss, the agony of yearning, all set against a beautiful riverside backdrop, dusted in heavy wish fulfillment.
And that to me was my so-called life. Like when we talked last week about how for you, what you were interested in learning more about was not the romance between Angela and Jordan, such that it was. That show to me is entirely about the absurdity of teenage longing. And at the time, that's all I cared about. And so that's sort of the reason here as well for teenagers anyway, to fall into it.
That's exactly right.
Somebody needs to make us feel as teenagers like our ridiculously out of control emotions are reasonable and important
and able to be spoken aloud. It's also another total side note, but now that we've pulled out a little bit, is the show always gets kind of like insulted or like made fun of for looking like a J. Crew catalog. That's because before the show even aired, they did a J. Crew ad in the J. Crew catalog, and then we're literally they are wearing J. Crew branded clothing. It was like a deal.
But it fits. If they're in a Martha's Vineyard kind of place, that's what they would be wearing.
Exactly.
That's exactly what they would be wearing. Like, you know, and you could say like, oh, well, Joey doesn't have the money for that. I can tell you the thrift stores in seaside towns are a gold mine.
Well, and just because they're poor now, her dad was a drug dealer who was trafficking thousands of pounds of marijuana.
Over 10,000 pounds.
I'll bet he bought her lots of clothes before he went to jail.
Sure. But also thrift stores are a thing. And
she's probably also wearing her sister's clothes and hating herself for it. And
yeah, they make that point in the beginning that she's borrowing her sister's clothing.
That's right, yeah.
Because her sister is pregnant and can't fit into it at the moment.
They have a nice, their relationship feels real to me. Where it's like,
sweet.
It's sweet, but they're still kind of bickering. But the older sister is sort of like not really giving her, like she's, when she runs out of the house and is being like rude to her, she's kind of not actually put off by it. She just kind of lets her be a jackass because she knows. And
yeah, they've been through a trauma together, and it's like they may bicker, but you can tell that that's like a solid It's the only solid thing she's got is her sister,
exactly.
Which is even weirder when they use the phrase orgasmic, both with her husband.
And you know what? It is weird. And I thought about that this time, though. And I was like, although it does kind of tell you how close they are, that like, and the way Joey says it, she clearly learned that from hearing her sister talk about food as being orgasmic. Mm-hmm. She's just telling him what she knows he wants to hear as a reaction to his food. So I think that is actually, it's weird, but in a weird way, it's also kind of sweet. And
I think it's just more weird in the context of how much this show, especially the first episode, is obsessed with sex.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Even the way they talk about food is
everything is tinged with it.
Kevin Williamson says he didn't see it that way. He saw it as romance, that the show is obsessed with romance. It is not.
Sorry, Kevin.
It's not.
Sorry. No. It is. I mean, maybe later, maybe it's part of that. I mean, he fucking Dawson only talks about romance, but he talks about romance and it's constantly negated by what's actually happening.
Exactly.
Like he's the one in a dream world.
Right. Oh, I don't think we outright said, we alluded to it, but then again, we think everything's perfect again because Dawson was able to tell Joey when he jerks off in the morning. And then immediately Joey sees what Dawson doesn't, which is his mom kissing her anchor, which Dawson was speculating simply based on how she says back to you, Bob, was happening. But everybody kind of thinks it's just him being like looking
paranoid,
for conflict because he has none. And it turns out he's right.
He is right.
And now Joey has to decide what to do about this knowledge.
Right. And that unfolds over the next couple of episodes. In some ways in a predictable way, but also like I say that because of how mad he gets at her later on when he finds out that she knew.
Right.
It feels very like, of course, this is a conflict. But, you know, I mean, the show is not afraid of cliches. Let's just say that.
Nope.
Not at all.
But again, I wonder... We talked last week how much of what we call cliche is because of these shows establishing them. I think some of this show really does still sort of traffic in some soap
100%
cliches. So it's not, I don't think it's doing anything in that way very original.
That was actually the thing that struck me the most was when I said this tone was different than what I expected when I was texting you. That's what I meant. I think it keeps a lot of the 90210 soap opera and just ages it down.
Right.
Like that sort of influence of nighttime soaps for teens is here too.
To 90210, just a different, what they're preoccupied by is different, how they talk is different, but the framework there. Totally.
Absolutely. That was what I meant when I said I felt like the tone was not what I was expecting. Was that it was much more soapy and much more like when she talks about how her, dad was in prison for possessing over 10,000 pounds of marijuana. Like I was not expecting that in Dawson's Creek.
Yeah. But it is that. It is because it's funny. I've done the rewatch so many times, but because I don't, like I said, usually there a couple of episodes I watch for season 1, but in general, I tend to jump in later. That sometimes I'll be like, what was it about season 1? Because in my memory, what I see are the twinkle lights and the sunsets not the
statutory rape.
Yeah. I always kind of think of it as being very wholesome in season 1, and visually it is. Visually it couldn't be more that, but
right.
But of course I was obsessed with it at 12 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course it's harder to watch now because of all the things you can't unsee as an adult.
That's the Creek. Man, there's so much to come. Some of my favorite characters I don't even
know yet.
In season 1.
Yeah. I have to say, I kept thinking when I was watching this that I felt like I think you felt watching 90210, which was that I had a surprisingly good time.
Yeah.
And that
makes me happy.
I might not have kept watching it if I didn't have kind of TV space to fill that I didn't need that I didn't want something really intense for. But I'm enjoying it. I will probably keep it on at my studio when I'm, you know, working on stuff, just to have like something entertaining in the background that I'm not like emotionally like destroyed by, you know.
It's funny. You said when we were watching My So-Called Life that like it was hard for you to think about, right? Like the sort of, I forget exactly how you described it. You may have sent it to me in a text. I don't remember if you said it on mic, but like almost embarrassed, not, but like maybe I don't know what the word is, but a kind of self-consciousness. I should just say, this is how I felt. And I was like, oh, I think this is what Jodie was talking about. Where the second they started talking to each other, and I was sitting next to my housemate who also has not watched the show, and thinking about you watching it and our listeners watching it maybe for the first time, then having to come talk about it, where it was like, this feels in a way like somebody found my diary. Not that I related to these kids, but that like this is so important to me and is so personal to me that like having somebody else see it who didn't grow up with it and whose brain was done cooking the first time they encountered it is like hard to think about, because it is so earnest in its own way. And
I mean, that's My So-Called Life for me. Like I was embarrassed before we started watching 90210 just because of the time frame. And
that's a different kind of
cringe. I know
we should all be a little embarrassed about 90210.
Yeah. But also, like, after watching it, I remembered why it was so important to me. But with My So-Called Life, it was like, I am showing you like my diary. Yeah. Even though it was not like these people's lives. But it was so important to my identity. I also, just on the record, I can't decide which I was more pleased with. So I got a text from my friend Andy. Apologize to you, Andy, if you're listening to this and you don't want me to read this, but this is very important to me. You said, yes, you looked like Angela Chase. First point. Thank you. Number 2. Oh, and you had the Plymouth. My car was a Chrysler. However, I know you don't care. I'm
just laughing at that you weren't sure whose car was whose. That's what's funny to me.
They were very similar. They were very similar. I had a Plymouth Turismo. I remember this now. He had a Chrysler Laser, which is what I said. I said Laser. I just said Plymouth, not Chrysler.
And we've all been doubting you this whole time.
I know you have. He also said it also had a bad axle shaft, making learning stick that much harder. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that my memory is terrible about some things, but cars, it's not so bad.
It's good that you left room in your brain for cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, somebody has to be the car corner of this podcast, and it's obviously me.
Are there any cars in this episode? Well, there's the one that the news anchor drops her off and they kiss through.
There's the cab.
And there's the cab, which
there's the yellow cab, which looks like it's from 1960, which is really funny.
The cab is really funny.
It's like you can imagine that this little Cape Town has one cab, and the guy that runs it is named Bob, and everyone knows him. Yeah, and they got to call him to get a cab, right? Or maybe Jim. Maybe it's Jim, but you got to call Jim if you need a cab. And he's got the one cab that's from 1960 that he keeps going. That's exactly right. Yeah, he takes really good care of it. Because why would you replace it if it still works? Exactly. Yeah. I want to talk about my pilgrimage, but everything I saw is a spoiler. Though for our listeners, here's not a spoiler, because it only means something if you already know what this means. But I've seen The Wall in person. So for anybody who's a Creek fan like me, I've been to The Wall. That sounds like something else. There's so many other important walls. This is The Wall. I mean, we've had some important walls in our history, Andrea. No. Maybe, but they're like second, third, and fourth. First is the Wall. Okay. And I've been there. Okay. Not as important as the Berlin Wall or the Wailing Wall or any of the other walls. The Great Wall. Or the Great Wall. No, yeah. I would say this is the greatest wall. Okay. Well, if I keep going at the rate I'm going, I will probably get there because it's turning into a studio companion. God, so it makes me so happy. Yeah. I was worried that like I was going to be really, especially after like when I first was like trying to figure out the tone, I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to like be careful about Andrea's feelings. And the stuff that is stupid about this show is it's stupid. It's stupid, and I love that it's stupid. Yeah. There's also, again, some of it gets so good. Oh, I can't wait. I guess I'm going to have to rewatch The Creek. I guess so. Well, you could also just probably like open your texts for me over the next couple of weeks and relive it that way, because I think that's probably what's going to happen.
10 million downloads, you get added to the rewatch group chat.
Yeah, you can be a part of the text chain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we did it. That was surprisingly fun.
I'm glad you had a good time.
Can we just put a little bit of a quick pop culture news break in here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Nobody else cares about this, but History Channel's Alone has returned.
Lots of people care about this.
Well, yes, but maybe not the people to listen to this podcast. But I have been watching season 10. It's fine, but what I'm really enjoying is they finally have an official podcast. Oh, that is hosted by two of the former contestants, one from season 1 and one from season 3. And they're having guests on of former contestants. And the one thing that's hard for me about this show is the sort of like hyper masculine prepper types that go on it that are very like women should be in the kitchen people,
right?
Who I don't love. But there's also the other half of the show, which is much more, maybe also a little conspiracy theory, but on the like naturopath, like herbal remedies side of things. And that's the side they decided to go with for the podcast. And so it's relatively palatable. They like,
nice,
it's interesting for those who are interested in survivalist nonsense. The show is back. The show is fine, but the podcast is fun.
It's funny that, again, I was so obsessed with survivalist stuff as a kid for some reason.
Yeah.
Like Survivor and Alone both should be my favorite things. And I think there's so much of both of them that I just...
Yeah, there's now 10 seasons of Alone. I mean, the seasons are short. They're like 10 episodes each. But I will say there's also Alone Australia now, which is not nearly as good, but I've been watching it anyway because I need things for the studio prior to this Dawson's Creek run. And I might start having to use the word stonker in conversation because it's just so fun.
What's a stonker?
It's like the trout that this guy's been getting have been stonkers.
Real fucking stonkers.
Real stonkers, these trout. Yeah. They're big.
Pacey Witter, season 1, real stonker.
He's a real stonker. Yeah, no, I'm kind of, I think the only reason I like the Australian one is for the accents and the language.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Stonker.
Anyway, total side note, Alone is back if you're interested.
What are we doing next week?
So this is a show that I have only been exposed to via my job working in the cage at my graduate school. The cage, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, is where all the AV equipment is stored. And there were a bunch of younger folk that were working in the cage with me that were obsessed with this show. We are watching Veronica Mars next week.
I got 2 in a row?
You have 3 in a row.
Whoa.
This is your run.
Because you got a pretty good run too. That's right.
I got a run of 3 and now you get a run of 3.
That's right. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, I could cry. I fully forgot this was coming up.
Yeah.
Wow. This is, what a great day.
What a great day. Yeah. I've watched episodes of this show. I've not watched them in order. I've not watched them as intentional.
Ooh, if we're going to talk about good pilots. Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. This show will instantly bring me back to being in a moldy basement in my graduate school with a bunch of people like 15 years younger than me, which was a surprisingly good time, actually, other than the mold in the basement.
It looks like it is streaming on Hulu and then other places that you'll have to pay. It is, I don't want to spoil it. I know we're supposed to be talking about whether or not these pilots succeed in our conversations. It is one of my favorite all-time pilots. I think it's phenomenal. I love Veronica Mars. I'm so excited. Wow, what a day.
I remember watching random episodes of it again in a basement with mold. But like having a good time. Mm-hmm. So I'm an open book I'm a blank slate. I'm not an open book. I'm a blank slate. I'm an open slate. No,
I'm an open book. You can ask me anything about Veronica Mars. I won't know the answers, but you can ask me.
Yeah. No, I'm a blank slate, sort of. Mostly. I'm familiar with the premise.
You've cleared your slate.
I've cleared
open.
my slate. Yes, exactly. I enjoy the people that are in this show. I know that for a fact.
World's best TV dad. World's best TV dad.
Have we talked about The Good Place on this show?
I don't know if we have.
I fucking love The Good Place.
I watched most of it, and I loved it. It's just that's my serial killer trait is I will watch 90% of a TV show and just never finish it.
That is for sure a serial killer trait. Mm-hmm. That's horrifying to me. But
I have watched The Good Place and wept.
Yeah, I love that show. So next week we will be talking about Veronica Mars.
Oh, man.
We're on an Andrea run. We're on a millennial run right now.
To be so strong.
Yeah, we were on a Gen X run. Now we're on a millennial run.
Just real quick for just a tiny little bit of scene setting. Veronica Mars' first episode aired September 2004. So I was just out of high school and closer in age to these characters than I was to the Creek characters. But I didn't come to it in 2004. I was a little older when I actually fell in love with this show. But it's...
and the years I was watching it, it was in reruns. I was watching it in 2011, 12. And by watching it, I mean just sort of like killing time in a basement with a bunch of younger folk, cataloging cameras and cleaning lenses. And...
That's kind of perfect for Veronica Mars. It just, if you don't know, it's a teen detective show.
Yeah.
It's her dad is a private detective. There's a mystery being solved. She's got a group of friends.
Yeah. And I was solving the mysteries of who kept their camera for too long and
that's right.
Who made off with a bunch of Canon Mark IIs, which is a thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be fun. I like this sort of lighter note we're going to be on for a little bit.
Whoa. Hold on. We did not say our Jersey connections.
Oh, shit.
What's yours?
Okay.
So sorry. And then everybody will say goodbye and you can go on your merry way.
And if you don't care about this, you know what's coming next. You can go now. Mine was that the woman who plays Grams, whose name is Mary Beth Peel. Mm-hmm. She's from Iowa. She went to Northwestern, but she was a Broadway star. Mm-hmm. And she... obviously lived in New York for a while because of that. In 93, she moved back to New York after divorcing her husband.
Good for her.
She had raised her children in Leonia, New Jersey.
Oh, nice.
That's the first one. But this is even more fun. She made her film debut. Keep in mind, this is a Broadway star and an opera singer and a classy ass lady.
Yeah.
She made her film debut in 1992's Jersey Girl.
Hell yeah.
How great is that?
That rules.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that is the one I found. But you said you found one also.
Yeah. When James Van Der Beek was offered the role, he was a student at Drew University.
Oh, okay.
So he was living in Jersey.
He went to Drew?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep. It's Madison, New Jersey. Drew University. Perfectly fine school.
I know. That's why I was like, you went to Drew?
Yeah. Yep.
Sort of a middle of the road, nothing place. No offense to people who went to Drew.
Yeah, I don't know how you end up. He's not from the area. I don't know how you end up at Drew.
That's what I mean. Yeah. It's like I went to Montclair, which is a fine school. Mm-hmm. It's a good school if you're performing arts or education. But, most people if you're not from Jersey, it's not your first choice.
I don't know how it ends up on your radar even. But yeah, Drew University.
Huh.
So those are pretty good.
Yeah.
I think those are pretty good Jersey connections.
I mean, for a show that is very heavily North Carolina oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who aren't familiar, Jersey Girl in 1992 is not what you're thinking of.
That movie's much later.
Yeah, that's 2004, I think. Mm-hmm. This is the story of Toby, a lower-class girl who's a preschool teacher from New Jersey who's tired of feeling like her life has no purpose and nothing interesting in it. Yeah, I've never seen this movie. But it has Jamie Gertz.
I was going to say somebody we talked about recently. That's how I know what this movie is because it's Jamie Gertz, isn't it?
It's Jamie Gertz, Dylan McDermott, Sheryl Lee. Huh. Maybe I need to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably bad, but...
Yeah, but we should at some point.
The headline from the Variety review: Jamie Gertz gives a winning performance in Jersey Girl, an unoriginal variation on such Italo-Yank romances as Moonstruck. That's a phrase I've never heard before.
Very good.
Interesting. Wait. Okay, I have to watch this. Wait.
Whoa.
Okay, before we go.
Yeah.
From this Variety review, Gertz is the prototypical young woman from New Jersey living with her dad, Joseph Bologna, who fears her becoming an old maid. Wait, that's not it. And working in a daycare center. She spends most of her time hanging out at the local Bendix Diner.
There you go.
That is the diner.
That's the diner.
That's on 17 in Teterboro.
Uh-huh. I like when they use a diner and keep its name.
Yes.
Because there are lots of...
The Bendix Diner is a fucking classic.
Movies and shows that use Jersey diners and then cover up the name. Like Kevin Smith's Jersey Girl uses the Berlin Diner, but they cover it up.
Yeah, no, the Bendix Diner in Hasbrook Heights, not Teterboro, it's on the way to Teterboro, is like one of the most iconic diner-ass diners you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm.
It's like...
You can see it if you go back on our Instagram to that during Yellow Jackets. One of our clips is about Jersey diners, and Bendix
you're right.
is in that
little
montage.
It's like the most...
Yeah, picture a diner,
Picture a diner. That's what you're going to see. But it's in this like weird middle of the highway situation.
It's also very Jersey to just precariously stick a diner somewhere and then you figure it out.
Yeah, it opened in 1947 and it's in the middle of Route 17. Okay, I'm done talking about New Jersey and diners for the moment.
Oh,
not ever,
no.
Not forever, but just for now. But yeah, that's it. Where can they find us?
At WatchersPodNJ on Instagram, WatchersPodNJ@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Yep. Send us, what's your favorite diner?
Yeah, exactly. What's your favorite order at your favorite diner?
Ooh, wait. I have never asked you this. What is your favorite order?
Well, we'll tell everybody next week.
Okay.
I don't want to paint I don't want to influence them, but we'll let y'all know what our favorite orders are next week.
Okay, that's fair. And you can find me on Instagram at Jodie_Mim, JODIE_MIM.
And I'm at AQ Andrea Q.
And we will see you next week. Where?
Neptune,
New Jersey?
No, sadly, no.
Damn.
Yeah.
Can't have everything.
Veronica Mars lives in Neptune. Isn't that cute?
It is cute. It would be better if it was Neptune, New Jersey, though.
You can pretend. You really can. It feels very Californian.
I'm going to try.
We can't have it all.
Nope. And on that note.
Bye-bye.
Bye.